have to be consumed with what is taking place outside of the walls of the church. The church has an external nature to it, a blessing to the people around them. The second thing that I would say is that we have to shift from program to people. We have to shift from a program mentality to a people mentality. We have to be willing to be concerned more about the people outside than inside, rather than our programs. Our programs sometimes are what drive the ship. They're what steer the ship. We have to be willing to shift that and say, you know what? What does it look like on an individual basis for people to have a relationship with God? That's really what this question is about. If we are to shift from program to people, see, because a lot of times we fall into the habit of saying, well, this program has been here for this long and it's always been, and therefore it always needs to continue. So when somebody new comes in and they have gifts that don't exactly match up with that program, and we say, well, the program has to continue to live. That can't die. We're jamming square pegs into round holes, right? People are no longer using their gifts. They're saying, well, the program can't fall, it can't die, so no one else will jump up, I will jump up and run into that space. That's not the church that Jesus designed. Jesus spent time with people. And he said, you know what, because you matter, because you have gifts and abilities that are valuable to the growing of God's church, we're going to figure out how to use those. And we're not just going to jam you into a place that you don't really feel like you belong. Now, maybe for many people, that is an uncomfortable thought. Because you grew up in programs that help change your life. And you think, well, if it worked for me, it's got to work for someone else. Let's remember that times change. We as people, in our relationship and our ability to connect with God, we change. We evolve over the course of time. You know, I spent valuable years in this church as a kid. I grew up Wednesday night, Bible Mountaineers. That's where I was. Bible Mountaineers. I still remember some of those crazy songs, and I'm thinking, I can't believe that we actually learned those songs. That's just kind of crazy to me. But it had meaning for me as a kid. And I'm proud of this church for one thing very specifically. Over the course of several years, this conversation goes back to before I came. There was this discussion, shouldn't we have some sort of kids program that takes place here at Edgewood? I mean, that was a regular part of conversation and quarterly meetings and things. And finally, we did some research and found we don't really have anybody to jump into that space. Because let's be honest, if you're gonna run a killer kids program, you got to have somebody that is their deal, and they are committed full on to that, and nothing else theoretically matters. Everything for them revolves around making that Wednesday night or that midweek program fly. So we said, well, there's nobody that really wants to step into that. So did we kind of drive our feet into the ground and say, oh no, it's going to happen? No, we looked around and we said, okay, for me, and this was a decision that me and my wife talked about, for us, it wasn't an option for our kids not to be involved in some sort of program that continued to grow them as children of God. It wasn't an option. So where can we send them? We started doing some research and found that the Ithaca Church of God in town, they're knocking it out of the park. They're doing a great job. My kids love going there. They can't wait for this Wednesday to come when the kids program starts up again. They are jazzed. They can't wait for it to happen. Super excited about it. So we moved from program to people and asking, what does it look like for you to have a relationship with God? Because we want to invest in that. Not just in a program that seems to meet a need, maybe that doesn't exist. The third piece that I would give you is we move from church-based leadership to kingdom-based leadership. Now, again, don't hear what I'm not saying. I believe that leadership within the church is extremely important. I'm not dissatisfied with our leadership at all. The biggest problem is this. We begin to ask the wrong kinds of questions, and we become the leader not of a movement of God's people, but we become managers of buildings and grounds and budgets and programs. And we have this almost mentality that says, this is all that matters. We're no longer invested in people. Church-based questions sound like this. How many? How often? How much? How was the worship? How was the potluck? How was the gathering? Was it fun? Was it enjoyable? Those are the kind of questions that revolve around making sure the machine keeps chugging away. Kingdom-based questions sound like this. How many marriages are better this year as opposed to last year? How about with parents and their kids? Are their relationships better? Do they seem closer together or further apart? How about the people that you work with, or that you neighbor next to, that you really have a hard time with? I mean, that encompasses all of us, doesn't it? We all have somebody that we work with or that we neighbor next to that is really hard to get along with. Personalities are different. Are those relationships better or are they worse? Those are kingdom-based questions. Those are questions about what's going on in the lives of the people who call God their Savior and Edgewood their home. Those are the questions to ask. Kingdom-based leadership celebrates people. Jesus comes to give us abundant life, and what we often end up with is abundant church. And we've kind of indirectly said, if you'll come and be a part of our program, your life will look better. That's not what we said out loud, but that's kind of what we said. We programmed everything to the hilt and said, all you need is connected to the church. And I'm not necessarily talking about our church. I'm talking about the church in general. And we as the body of believers have stopped talking about what it means to be incarnational, take on the form and the shape of Jesus Christ in our daily lives. I was with a friend of mine a couple weeks ago, and I've heard him say this before. I had heard it, and it kind of sunk into my brain, and then last weekend, it just really kind of caught me. His name is Jerry Graham. He's the youth pastor up at a church in Midland. And he said, Satan doesn't have to make you bad. He's just got to make you busy. And for whatever reason, a couple weekends ago when I was with him, that really stuck in my heart. Satan doesn't have to make you bad, just busy. Because what happens when we're busy? Well, we become disconnected from God's people. And ultimately, we flip the coin and we become disconnected with God because we're not gathering with His people. Satan doesn't have to make you bad, just busy. When we're too busy to the point of missing Jesus in our daily lives, we're too busy. We are no longer the incarnation of Jesus. Because we've been consumed with things of work and school and vacation and extracurricular stuff. And stuff that's all great. And stuff that matters and has a sense of filling us up with life. But if those become the dominant things, again, this goes back to what are the primary questions that we are asking about our relationship with God and our connection to a local church? What are the dominant questions we're asking? God conversations have been replaced by church conversations. How was it? Was it fun? I saw you participating. That was good. And if those are the only questions that we ask, if those are the dominant things that come out of our mouth as we have conversations with our spouse, our friends, our kids, we never get beyond that. We say, what is God doing right now in your heart, in your life? How are relationships that are going on at school, at work? What are those things like? If we never have those kind of conversations, our relationship with God becomes very shallow and disconnected. This is all about the incarnation of Jesus Christ in our lives, something that Jesus invites us into. Here's a video to maybe help talk about this in a slightly different way.